December 18th, 1944, 2:47 in the morning. Corporal Walter Brenner's finger hovers over the transmit button of a German military radio. The temperature is 14 degrees below zero. Snow falls so thick he cannot see his hand in front of his face. Around him, in frozen foxholes dug into hard Belgian earth, 300 American soldiers sleep unaware they have 4 hours to live. Walter's hands shake, not from cold, though his fingers are numb, not from fear, though terror courses through him. They shake from the weight of what he is about to do. Behind him, Lieutenant James Harrow stands with his arms crossed, his face pale in the darkness. "Brenner," he says quietly, "if you press that button, if you impersonate a German officer on their frequency, that's a federal crime. Court-martial offense. Possible execution." Walter closes his eyes. He hears his grandmother's voice from childhood, soft and musical speaking German, in the warm kitchen of their Milwaukee home. "Die Worte müssen wie Musik klingen, Walter." The words must sound like music. He opens his eyes. He presses the button. "Panzergruppe Eisenfaust here as Division's Commando." His voice emerges in perfect German, flawless Prussian accent, clipped military tone, the voice of an enemy officer with the authority to command death. What happens in the next 3 hours will save 300 lives, or get him executed by his own army. This is the story of how a 19-year-old radio operator with no special training, no authority, and no right to do what he did, stopped a panzer assault with nothing but his grandmother's voice. It's the story of a weapon forged not in a factory, but in a kitchen, where an old woman taught a boy to speak the language of the enemy as if he were born to it. It's about the men who should have died in their foxholes that frozen morning. Men with wives, men with children, men with mothers waiting for telegrams that would never come. Men who had no idea that their survival depended on a teenager violating every military regulation in existence. The United States Army buried this story for 30 years. Classified it top secret, sealed the records, scrubbed the files. When the truth finally emerged in 1975, it revealed something profound about war itself. Sometimes the most powerful weapons aren't forged from steel. Sometimes they're forged in the soft rhythm of a grandmother's voice, teaching a boy to speak words that would one day mean the difference between life and death for an entire company. His name was Walter Brenner, and for 3 decades, almost no one knew what he did. But to understand how he saved those lives, we need to go back 6 hours, to the moment when Walter first heard the voices planning murder. December 17th, 1944, 8 o'clock in the evening. The Battle of the Bulge is 4 days old. German forces have smashed through American defensive lines in the Ardennes forest of Belgium, creating a massive bulge in the Allied front. American units are scattered, surrounded, cut off from supply and reinforcement. Walter Brenner's company, Company C, of the 394th Infantry Regiment, occupies a desperate defensive position near the town of Bastogne. 300 soldiers, surrounded on all sides by German armor and infantry. The numbers are brutal and precise. 14 degrees below zero, 12 rounds of ammunition per rifleman, no air support because the weather is too bad for planes to fly, no reinforcements because every road is cut, no hope of relief because there is no one coming. They are going to die here. Everyone knows it. No one says it. But the knowledge sits heavy in every frozen foxhole and every labored breath visible in the frigid air. Sergeant Tommy Briggs sits in a foxhole beside Walter, showing him a creased photograph for the 3rd time that day. 2 little girls in Sunday dresses, ages 4 and 6, smiling at the camera. Briggs's daughter's back in Nebraska. "Tell me we're getting out of this, kid," Briggs says. His voice is steady, but his hands shake as he holds the photo. Walter forces a smile he doesn't feel. "We'll make it, Sarge." But he doesn't believe it. Neither does Briggs. The lie hangs between them in the frozen air. Private Danny Martinez crawls through the snow to their position, moving carefully to avoid drawing sniper fire. He's 19 years old, same age as Walter. Mexican-American kid from Texas, who became Walter's closest friend during training because they shared something fundamental. They were both outsiders, Danny for his heritage, Walter for his language. Danny offers Walter half a cigarette already lit. They share it in silence, watching their breath mix with the smoke in the darkness. "Brenner," Danny says quietly, "you think they'll remember us, or are we just going to be another footnote nobody reads?" Walter doesn't answer. There's nothing to say. Nearby, Lieutenant James Harrow checks his watch for the 15th time in an hour. He's 26 years old, Yale graduate from Old Money, Connecticut stock. Smart, educated, trained in tactics and command. But all his education means nothing here. His orders are to hold position. There is nowhere to retreat to. No tactical maneuver that changes the math. The math is simple and terrible. The surrounded unit faces German panzer divisions with overwhelming firepower and the patience to wait for the perfect moment to attack. It's not a question of if they'll be overrun, it's a question of when. The answer comes at 3 in the afternoon, though Walter doesn't know it yet. His squad is ordered to probe forward, testing German positions, looking for weaknesses that don't exist. They advance through snow and shell fire, moving from cover to cover, expecting at any moment to be cut down by machine gun fire. Instead, they find an abandoned farmhouse. The Germans pulled back from this position during the night, consolidating their lines. The farmhouse is a wreck, walls blown out by artillery, roof collapsed. But in the basement, protected from the elements, Walter's squad finds something unexpected. A German military radio, torn, that FUD2 transceiver. Sophisticated equipment, still functional despite weeks of combat. Lieutenant Harrow examines it carefully, then looks at Walter. "Brenner, you speak German. It's in your service file." "Yes, sir." "Can you operate this?" Walter studies the radio. German labels and markings, but the basic principles are identical to American equipment. Frequency dial, volume control, transmit button. "Yes, sir, I can operate it." "Good. Get it back to our lines. Set it up somewhere quiet where you can monitor their frequencies. Intelligence value. Report anything you hear that might be useful." "Understood, sir." They carry the radio back through the snow, 30 pounds of German engineering in a metal case. Walter slings it over his shoulder, Danny Martinez carries extra batteries, and Sergeant Briggs provides cover as they make their way back to the American defensive perimeter. By nightfall, Walter has the radio operational. He sets it up in a foxhole 50 yards from the main defensive line. Isolated position. Quiet enough to hear transmissions clearly without interference from American radio traffic. Lieutenant Harrow stops by as Walter is testing the equipment. "Brenner, I want you to understand something. You're not authorized to transmit on that radio, only to listen. Monitor their frequencies, gather intelligence, report what you hear." "Clear." "Clear, sir." "If you transmit on German frequencies, that's a violation of radio silence protocols. Automatic court-martial offense." "Understood." "Understood, sir." Harrow nods and disappears into the darkness. Walter puts on the headphones. He begins scanning German military frequencies. Static, silence, the hiss of empty channels. Then voices. German voices speaking in crisp, clear military German. Commanders coordinating movements. Panzer units reporting positions. Artillery observers calling in coordinates. Walter understands every single word. And understanding those words requires explaining something about Walter's childhood. Something about the old woman who raised him and gave him this gift that he never asked for and never imagined would matter. Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 1925. Walter Brenner is born in a small German-American neighborhood where the signs are in German and the churches hold services in German, and the old women at the bakery speak English with heavy accents that mark them as perpetual foreigners. His mother dies in childbirth. His father, Otto Brenner, works double shifts at a brewery, trying to provide for his infant son. But it's Walter's grandmother, Margaret, who raises him. Margaret Brenner emigrated from Bavaria in 1898, fleeing poverty and seeking opportunity in America. She arrived speaking no English. She learned enough to survive, to shop, to navigate the basics of American life. But she never became fluent. Her world remained fundamentally German, German language, German customs, German songs and stories, and the particular rhythm of speech she brought from the old country. She raises Walter in 2 languages simultaneously, English for the world outside their home, German for everything that matters. She doesn't just teach him vocabulary and grammar. She teaches him music, the rhythm and cadence of Bavarian German, the particular inflections that mark education level, social class, regional origin. The difference between how farmers speak and how merchants speak and how military officers speak. Walter is 5 years old, sitting on her lap in the kitchen while she reads him Grimm's fairy tales in German. She makes him repeat phrases, correcting his pronunciation with patient insistence. Nein, Liebchen, not Wasser. Say Wasser. The W is soft like a V again. Wasser. Better again. Wasser. Gut, good. Now the next word, she teaches him a lullaby. Guten Abend, gute Nacht. Good evening, good night. She sings it every night before bed, her voice soft and slightly off-key, and Walter absorbs not just the words but the way she shapes them, the way her tongue touches her teeth, the way her lips form the vowels. By age 8, Walter speaks German and English with equal fluency. The neighborhood kids tease him. Kraut boy. Hun! They mock his grandmother's accent when she calls for him from the porch. His father tells him to speak only English outside the house. You're American, Walter. Don't let anyone question that. But at home with Margaret, German flows like water. She tells him stories. Not fairy tales, but real stories from the old country. Her brother who served in the Kaiser's army in World War I, how he died at Verdun, how war destroys everything beautiful and leaves only grief. Language is a gift, Walter, she tells him when he's 10 years old helping her prepare dinner in the kitchen. But it can also be a weapon. You must always use it wisely. He doesn't understand what she means. Not then. He's 10 years old and language is just words, just the way you communicate. How could words be a weapon he'll understand later? In a frozen foxhole in Belgium, listening to voices, planning murder. One afternoon when Walter is 12, Margaret does something unusual. She sits him down at the kitchen table and teaches him how to change his accent. Listen carefully, Walter. This is how farmers speak. She demonstrates her voice soft and musical, the vowels rounded, the consonants gentle. This is how merchants speak. Her voice becomes sharper, more businesslike. And this is how officers speak. Her voice transforms. It becomes clipped, authoritative. The consonants hard, the vowels precise, every syllable crisp and military. Why do I need to know this, Oma? Because the same words mean different things from different mouths. An officer saying move forward is a command. A farmer saying move forward is a suggestion. You must understand the difference. She makes him practice the same phrase in 3 different accents, over and over until he can shift between them fluidly, until he can hear the difference not just in the words, but in the power behind them. It seems like a game, like something she's teaching him because she's old and from another world and wants to pass on knowledge that doesn't matter anymore. It will save 300 lives. November 1943, Walter receives his draft notice. He's 18 years old. America has been at war for 2 years. Young men are being fed into the machinery of global conflict at a rate that would have been unimaginable before Pearl Harbor. Margaret cries when he shows her the letter. She's 67 years old now, frail, her hands shaking with age. They will send you to fight Germans, your own people. They're not my people, Oma. I'm American. You speak like them. You sound like them. What if they make you kill someone who sounds like me? Walter has no answer for that. The question sits between them like a physical thing. He reports to Fort Benning, Georgia for basic training. During intake processing, he fills out forms. Standard questions about background, education skills. One question asks, do you speak any foreign languages? Walter hesitates. It's 1943 in America. German Americans face suspicion, surveillance. Sometimes internment in camps out west where families are held behind barbed wire simply for having the wrong last name, the wrong accent, the wrong heritage. His father warned him before he left Milwaukee. Don't tell them about the German. They'll think you're a spy. They'll think your loyalty is divided. But Walter checks the box anyway. German, fluent. The consequences are immediate. 2 intelligence officers pull him aside for additional screening. They interview him for 3 hours. Where did you learn German? Who taught you? Do you have family in Germany? Have you ever been contacted by German agents? Do you sympathize with the Nazi regime? Walter answers truthfully. His grandmother taught him. She emigrated in 1898, 45 years ago. He's never been to Germany. He's never been contacted by anyone. He's American. His loyalty is to America. They make him translate documents, German military communications that were captured in North Africa. He translates them perfectly, his accent so flawless that the intelligence officers exchange glances. Their conclusion written in his file, No security risk identified. Subject's German language capability is authentic and native level. However, recommend against assignment to intelligence duties due to potential accusations of divided loyalty. Assigned to Signal Corps standard radio operations. Walter becomes a radio operator, monitoring Allied frequencies, relaying messages, routine work. His German language ability is noted in his service file and then promptly ignored. Nobody knows what to do with a German-speaking American soldier who can't be trusted with intelligence work. By December 1944, Walter has been in Europe for 4 months. He's seen combat. He's seen friends die. He's learned that war is not glorious or noble, but simply brutal mathematics. How many of us versus how many of them? How much ammunition versus how much distance? How many hours until we're overrun? And now sitting in a frozen foxhole with a captured German radio and headphones pressed against his ears, Walter learns exactly what those mathematics look like for his position. The German voices on the radio are calm, professional, coordinating the final details of an assault. Panzergruppe Eisenfaust will assault American positions at grid reference 8472 at 0600 hours. 6 in the morning, 4 hours from now. Objective: complete destruction of enemy defensive pocket. Complete destruction, not capture, not suppression, destruction. Estimated enemy strength, 300 soldiers. They know exactly how many Americans are in this position. They've been watching, counting, calculating. Expected casualties total. Total. They expect to kill or capture every single American in this defensive perimeter. Tommy Briggs, who has 2 daughters waiting for him in Nebraska. Danny Martinez, who jokes about being forgotten by history. Lieutenant Harrow, who follows the rules because he believes rules create order. Every soldier in this frozen hell who still believes they might somehow survive. All dead by dawn. Walter rips off the headphones. His hands are shaking. His breath comes in short gasps that have nothing to do with the cold. He runs through the snow to Lieutenant Harrow's foxhole. "Sir," his voice is urgent, loud enough to wake soldiers in nearby positions. "Sir, I intercepted German communications. They're planning a major panzer assault on our eastern flank at 0600. Overwhelming force. They're going to hit us with everything they have." Harrow sits up instantly alert. He takes out a small notebook. "Details, Corporal, everything you heard." Walter tells him the unit designation, the grid coordinates, the timeline, the objective. Harrow writes it all down, his face grim in the darkness. "Good work, Brenner. Excellent intelligence. I'll relay this to battalion command immediately." Walter waits beside the foxhole while Harrow uses the radio to contact headquarters. He hears Harrow's side of the conversation. Clipped military terminology, grid references, threat assessment, request for guidance, then silence. Harrow signs off. He looks at Walter and his expression tells the story before he speaks. Battalion acknowledges the intelligence, and that's it. We maintain current defensive positions and prepare to repel the assault. That's insane. We can't repel a panzer assault. We don't have anti-tank weapons. We don't have artillery support. We don't have air cover. We'll be slaughtered. I know. Then why aren't we repositioning? Why aren't we calling in artillery? Why aren't we doing anything? Harrow's voice is tired, defeated. "Brenner, there's nowhere to reposition to. We're surrounded on all sides. Artillery can't be redirected without higher authorization, which would take hours we don't have. Air support is grounded because of weather. Battalion's orders are clear. We hold this position. So we just wait to die. We follow orders, Corporal. That's what soldiers do." Walter stares at him, this Yale-educated officer with his textbook understanding of military tactics and his faith in the chain of command. This man who believes that following procedures will somehow produce a different outcome than the mathematics demand. "Permission to return to my post, sir." "Granted." Walter walks back through the snow to his isolated foxhole. The German radio sits there, headphones resting on top of the metal case. He sits down in the frozen earth. He puts the headphones back on. The German voices continue their calm, professional coordination, confirming readiness, checking ammunition, verifying attack routes. They're going to murder every man in this perimeter at dawn. And the system, the military hierarchy, the chain of command, the rules and regulations that are supposed to protect soldiers have just acknowledged that intelligence and decided to do nothing. Walter understands with perfect clarity. He has knowledge that could save lives. He has a tool that could prevent this massacre. He has a capability that no one else in this frozen perimeter possesses. And he has absolutely no authority to use any of it. Around him, soldiers sleep, exhausted men who have been fighting for days, men who trust that their officers will protect them, men who believe that the system works. Sergeant Briggs, 50 yards away, probably looking at that photo of his daughters one more time before trying to sleep. Danny Martinez joking with someone about home, about Texas, about the life he plans to live when this war ends. The soldiers in Company C have futures, families waiting for them, lives that will end at dawn unless someone does something. Walter looks at the German radio. He thinks about his grandmother, about her voice in the Milwaukee kitchen, about the way she taught him to speak German, not just as a language, but as music, as power, as something that could change the world. Die Worte müssen wie Musik klingen, Walter. He thinks about what she told him when he was 10 years old. Language can be a weapon, an idea forms, insane, impossible, illegal, but possible. He could impersonate a German officer. He could transmit on this radio. He could issue false orders to the panzer units coordinating the attack. He could redirect them away from American positions. The problems are immediate and overwhelming. First, it's illegal. Impersonating enemy military officers is a federal crime. Violating radio silence is an automatic court-martial offense. If he does this, if he's caught, he'll be executed by his own army. Second, it's technically almost impossible. If he makes a single error in pronunciation, if his accent slips for even one syllable, if he uses the wrong military terminology or the wrong authentication protocol, the Germans will immediately recognize the deception, and they won't just ignore it. They'll attack with even greater force. His action won't save lives, it will doom them. Third, even if he succeeds, even if he pulls off this impossible deception, the army might still execute him. Unauthorized military action, conspiracy, sabotage, taking command authority he doesn't possess. There are a dozen charges they could bring. The alternative is watching men die. Walter sits in the frozen darkness, headphones on, listening to the calm German voices planning massacre. He begins to compose a message in his head, not in English, in German. He thinks about the German officers he's been listening to for the past 2 hours. He thinks about their manner of speaking, their pronunciation, their military protocols. He thinks about his grandmother teaching him to speak like an officer. Clipped consonants, precise vowels, authority in every syllable. A plan forms. He needs to sound like a staff officer from division command, someone with the authority to redirect panzer movements, someone whose orders would be followed without question. He begins crafting the exact phrases he'll need. German military terminology, authentication codes he's heard on the radio, grid coordinates for false objectives. Every word must be perfect. Every inflection must be authentic. Every syllable must carry the weight of command. His grandmother's voice whispers in his memory, Die Worte müssen wie Musik klingen. The words must sound like music. Walter takes off the headphones. He looks toward the American positions where soldiers sleep, unaware that their lives hang in the balance. He makes a decision. He's going to do this. He's going to violate every rule. He's going to commit a federal crime. He's going to risk execution, because watching men die without trying to save them is not something he can live with. But first he needs authorization, or at least he needs to try. He can't do this completely alone. If he transmits false orders without telling anyone, without any chain of command knowledge, then he truly is a rogue actor, a criminal, someone whose action, even if successful, will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of military law. But if he can get someone, anyone in his command structure, to approve this, then he has at least some cover, some justification, some argument that he was following orders even if those orders were themselves illegal. Walter crawls through the snow to Lieutenant Harrow's foxhole. Harrow is not sleeping. He's sitting with his back against the frozen earth, staring at nothing. Sir, Walter says quietly, I need to speak with you. What is it, Brenner? The German attack at dawn, sir. I have a way to stop it. Harrow looks at him. What way to break in, Sway? I can transmit false orders on the German radio frequency, redirect the Panzer assault away from our position. The silence that follows is profound. Harrow's face goes through several expressions: shock, disbelief, then something harder: understanding. You're talking about impersonating an enemy officer? Yes, sir. That's a federal crime, Corporal. That's unauthorized military action. If you do this and it fails, you'll be shot by your own side for breaking radio silence and compromising our position. If it succeeds, you might still be shot for violating military law. I understand, sir. Do you really understand what you're proposing? You're talking about taking command authority you don't possess, about engaging in psychological warfare without training or authorization, about betting lives on your ability to fool professional German military officers. I can do it, sir. How do you know? Because my grandmother taught me to speak German like a native, because I've been listening to their radio traffic for 2 hours and I understand their protocols, because I can sound exactly like a German division command staff officer, and because if I don't try, those men die at dawn. Harrow stares at him for a long moment. I can't authorize this, Brenner. I don't have the authority. This is beyond anything in my training or my command scope. Then what do we do, sir? Harrow is quiet. Then he makes a decision. I can escalate this. I can bring it to battalion. Let them decide, but Brenner, you need to understand something. If I escalate this and battalion says no, you stand down. You don't go rogue. You don't do this without authorization. Because if you do, I will personally testify against you at your court-martial. Clear, clear, sir. Wait here. Harrow disappears into the darkness, heading toward battalion headquarters 2 miles behind the lines. Walter waits. Around him, the night is silent except for the whisper of falling snow. Somewhere in the distance, artillery rumbles. The front line miles away where other men are dying. Danny Martinez finds him sitting there. Hermano, what's going on? I saw the lieutenant leave. You in trouble? Maybe, I don't know. That's real specific, man. Danny sits beside him in the snow. Whatever it is, I got your back. You know that, right? I know. They sit in silence. Two 19-year-old kids in a war they didn't start trying to survive circumstances they can't control. Midnight approaches. 4 hours until the German attack. At battalion headquarters, Lieutenant Harrow stands before Major Kenneth Warren, the battalion commander, and explains Corporal Brenner's plan. Major Warren listens without interruption. When Harrow finishes, Warren sits in silence for a full minute. Then he calls for his staff. Captain Theodore Armstrong, the battalion legal officer, arrives first. When he hears the proposal, his response is immediate and unequivocal. Absolutely not. This violates Articles 81, 92, and 134 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Disobeying orders, unauthorized military action and conduct, prejudicial to good order and discipline. If Corporal Brenner does this, he's committed court-martial offenses. If we authorize it, we're all complicit. All of us could face charges. Captain Morris, the intelligence officer, has a different perspective. What's the alternative, sir? We have solid intelligence that our men will be overrun at dawn. We have no ability to defend that position. The casualty projections are mathematically certain. Captain Reynolds, operations officer, tries to find a tactical solution. We could order a withdrawal to secondary positions. Major Warren cuts him off. Withdraw to where, Captain? We're surrounded. There are no secondary positions. There's nowhere to go. The debate continues. Legal consequences versus moral imperatives. Military law versus the immediate survival of American soldiers. Captain Armstrong is adamant. Sir, if we authorize this and it becomes public, it sets a catastrophic precedent. It says soldiers can ignore military law whenever they think they know better. That's the breakdown of command authority. That's chaos. Captain Morris counters. And if we don't authorize this, we're choosing legal purity over American lives. Families receive telegrams because we were too concerned about procedure. How do we defend that? Major Warren listens to both sides, then he polls his staff. A vote unofficial but binding. Captain Armstrong, legal officer, num. Captain Reynolds, operations, yes. Captain Morris, intelligence, yes. Lieutenant Harrow, yes. 3-1. Major Warren makes his decision. We're doing it, but we're protecting ourselves and Corporal Brenner. This gets classified the moment it happens. Top secret. We bury the records. Brenner gets transferred to another unit immediately after. His service record gets sanitized. This operation never happened. Official report will attribute any German confusion to their own communications failures. Captain Armstrong protests. Sir, that's obstruction of justice. That's conspiracy to conceal evidence. I don't care, Captain. I'm not sacrificing American soldiers to maintain legal theory, but Brenner needs to understand the stakes. If this fails, if it goes wrong in any way, we deny everything. He faces court-martial alone with no institutional protection. Make sure he understands that. Yes, sir. Major Warren looks at Lieutenant Harrow. Get back to your corporal. Tell him he has authorization from battalion command, but make the consequences crystal clear. Success or failure, this never happened. He's on his own if it goes wrong. Understood? Understood, sir. 1:45 in the morning. Lieutenant Harrow returns to the American defensive perimeter. He finds Walter still waiting in the snow beside Danny Martinez. Harrow's face is grim. Brenner, you have authorization. Walter's heart pounds. Sir, battalion has approved your plan, but there are conditions. If this fails, you're on your own. Battalion will deny all knowledge. You'll face court-martial with no institutional support. Do you understand? Yes, sir. And if it succeeds, this gets classified, buried. You'll be transferred out immediately. Your records will be scrubbed. You'll never be able to talk about this. No recognition, no medal, no public acknowledgement. You'll have saved lives and no one will ever know your name. Are you prepared for that? Walter thinks about Tommy Briggs and his 2 daughters. He thinks about Danny Martinez and his family in Texas. He thinks about the men sleeping in frozen foxholes waiting for dawn. I don't care about recognition, sir. I just don't want to watch them die when I can do something about it. Harrow grips his shoulder. You have until 0600 hours, 4 hours. Can you do this? Walter looks at the German radio sitting in the foxhole. He thinks about his grandmother's voice, about the way she taught him to make words sound like music. I can do this. 2 o'clock in the morning. Walter Brenner sits alone in his foxhole, the captured German radio in front of him, headphones resting on the cold metal case. He has authorization from battalion command. He has 4 hours until death arrives. He has one chance to make this work. Now comes the hard part. Execution. The technical challenge is brutal and unforgiving. A single mispronounced word will expose the deception. A grammatical error will trigger immediate suspicion. An accent that slips from Prussian military German into Bavarian civilian German will alert trained German officers that something is wrong. And if they suspect deception, they won't just ignore his transmission. They'll attack with even greater ferocity. They'll assume American intelligence is trying to manipulate them, which means American intelligence knows their plans, which means the element of surprise is lost, and they need to strike immediately with overwhelming force. Walter's mistake won't save lives. It will guarantee their deaths. He puts on the headphones and begins listening to German radio traffic with complete focus. Not just hearing the words, but analyzing them, studying them, learning the exact patterns of speech that mark authentic German military communication. For 30 minutes, he takes mental notes. Authentication protocols. The Germans use a simple system. Unit designation first, command authority statement second, then orders. Here is Divisionskommando. This is division command. That phrase carries weight. It signals authority from higher headquarters. Orders that follow that phrase are not questioned. Order format. Brief sentences, clipped delivery, no unnecessary words. Military German is efficient, almost brutal in its economy of language. Zieländerung, target change. Neue Koordinaten folgen, new coordinates follow. Sofort ausführen, execute immediately, not please execute, or we recommend you execute, or when convenient execute. Just execute immediately. Command language, the language of officers who expect obedience. Speech patterns. This is where Walter's childhood training becomes critical. The Panzer commanders he's listening to speak Hochdeutsch, High German with Prussian military inflection. Consonants are clipped hard. Vowels are precise, almost sharp. There's no softness, no musical quality. This is the German of the officer class, the German of command. It's different from his grandmother's Bavarian German. Completely different from the warm musical language she used in the Milwaukee kitchen. But she taught him this too. She taught him how to shift between dialects, between classes, between the German of farmers and the German of officers. Walter whispers practice phrases to himself. Eisenfaust hier Divisionskommando. He stops. The rhythm is wrong. Too much emphasis on here. German officers don't emphasize function words. They emphasize command words. He tries again. Eisenfaust Divisionskommando. Better, shorter, more authoritative. The kind of abbreviated military speech that professionals use when they're coordinating complex operations under time pressure. Zieländerung, Priorität 1. Target change, Priority 1. He practices the individual words focusing on pronunciation. The German Z sound pronounced tis. The A vowel somewhere between A and A. The sharp T at the end of Priorität. Every syllable must be perfect. He thinks about his grandmother, about how she taught him to shift accents. Farmer German soft and musical. Officer German hard and commanding. The same words, different power. He whispers the test phrase, adjusting the inflection. Sharp, clipped, authoritative, perfect. Walter practices for 40 minutes. Whispered German in the frozen darkness. Testing pronunciations, adjusting inflections, finding the exact vocal quality that sounds like a German division command staff officer. Around him, American soldiers sleep unaware that their lives depend on a 19-year-old corporal's ability to speak their enemy's language with perfect authenticity. 2:40 in the morning. Walter has the accent perfected. Now he needs to craft the exact message he'll transmit. He pulls out a small notebook and pencil. In the darkness, by feel more than sight, he writes out the transmission in German script. Eisenfaust hier Divisionskommando. Zieländerung. Priorität 1. Neue Angriffskoordinaten. 4792. Versorgungsdepot. Strategischer Wert übertrifft aktuelles Ziel. Bewegung beginnt 0330. Bestätigen. He reads it back to himself, translating mentally to check for errors. Iron Fist, this is Division Command. Target change. Priority 1. New attack coordinates 4792. Supply depot. Strategic value exceeds current objective. Movement begins 0330 hours. Confirm. The coordinates are critical. 4792 is a real grid reference pointing to an abandoned supply depot 8 kilometers south of the American defensive position, far enough to divert the German attack completely, close enough to sound like a legitimate military objective. The justification is vague but authoritative. Strategic value exceeds current objective. It doesn't specify what that strategic value is, which discourages questions. Officers don't question division command when orders come with priority designations. The time hack is specific. Movement begins 0330 hours. 3:30 in the morning, 30 minutes from now. Immediate enough to sound urgent, distant enough to allow for coordination. Walter reads the message aloud, barely whispered, testing each word, making sure the flow is natural, making sure it sounds like something a real German officer would say. It does. He memorizes it, every word, every syllable. He can't read from the paper when he transmits. He needs to speak naturally, confidently, with the absolute certainty of someone who has the authority to redirect panzer assault groups. Lieutenant Harrow crawls to Walter's position. Brenner, status. Ready, sir, I have the message prepared. I'm waiting for the right moment to transmit, which is when the Germans are doing final coordination now, unit readiness checks. In about 5 minutes, they'll finish those checks and move to final attack preparation. That's the window, after they've confirmed readiness, but before they've begun final movement. That's when a redirection order would sound most legitimate. Harrow nods. He understands tactics well enough to recognize sound reasoning. I'm staying here. Whatever happens, I'm a witness. Sergeant Briggs appears crawling through the snow. Lieutenant said something big is happening. Brenner, what are you doing? Walter looks at him. At this 30-year-old father of 2 who has shown him nothing but kindness since they met. I'm trying to save your life, Sarge. By doing what? Something illegal. Briggs studies his face in the darkness. Then he nods slowly. My girls, Sarah and Emily. If this works, they get to grow up with their daddy. That's the idea. Then do it, kid. Whatever it is, do it. Danny Martinez joins them. 3 soldiers and an officer crowded in a foxhole around a German radio. Hermano, Danny says quietly, you're about to do something crazy, aren't you? Yeah. Good. Crazy is better than dead. 2:45 in the morning, Walter puts on the headphones. He tunes the German radio to the Panzer command frequency with absolute precision. He hears the final coordination. German voices calm and professional, confirming readiness for the assault. Eisenfaust in alle Einheiten. Letzte Statusprüfung. Bereitschaft melden. Iron Fist to all units. Final status check. Report readiness. One by one, panzer commanders and infantry coordinators report their readiness. Ammunition loaded. Positions occupied. Routes confirmed. Men prepared. The attack is minutes from execution. Walter watches the second hand on his watch. He's timing this with precision. Too early, the Germans have time to verify his order with higher command. Too late, they're already in motion and won't respond to new directives. He needs the exact moment, the narrow window between final preparation and initial movement. The German commander's voice comes through the headphones. Verstanden. Alle Einheiten bereit. Angriff beginnt Punkt 06:00. Understood. All units ready. Attack begins exactly 0600. This is the moment. Right now, the German panzer commanders are in that brief pause between receiving final confirmation and beginning the complex choreography of a coordinated assault. This is when new orders from division command would arrive. This is when redirections happen. Walter takes a breath. He thinks about his grandmother in the Milwaukee kitchen, teaching him to speak German like music. Die Worte müssen wie Musik klingen, Walter. The words must sound like music. He presses the transmit button. 2:47 in the morning. Eisenfaust here, Divisionskommando. His voice emerges in perfect German, clipped Prussian accent, hard consonants, precise vowels, the voice of authority, the voice of an officer who expects immediate obedience. Silence on the German frequency. 3 seconds, 4 seconds, 5 seconds. Walter's heart hammers so hard he can feel it in his throat. Did they detect something wrong? Is his accent flawed? Did he make an error he didn't catch? Then a response. Division's Commando here, Eisenfaust. Empfangsbereit. Division Command, this is Iron Fist. Ready to receive. They accepted his authentication. No suspicion, no hesitation, no challenge to verify his identity. They believe he's a German Division Command staff officer. Walter continues, forcing his voice to remain steady despite the terror coursing through him. Zieländerung, Priorität 1, neue Angriffskoordinaten, 4792, Versorgungsdepot, strategischer Wert übertrifft aktuelles Ziel. Bewegung beginnt 0330, bestätigen. He delivers each word with absolute precision. No hesitation, no uncertainty. The tone of a staff officer who has already analyzed the strategic situation and made a command decision that will not be questioned. Silence again, longer this time. 10 seconds, 15 seconds. Walter waits, his finger still on the transmit button, ready to respond to questions if they come, ready to defend the order with additional justification if necessary. In the foxhole, Lieutenant Harrow has stopped breathing. Sergeant Briggs stares at the radio with wide eyes. Danny Martinez crosses himself. Then the German response. Verstanden. Eisenfaust führt neue Koordinaten aus. Bewegung beginnt 0330. Bestätigung 47. 92 Versorgungsdepot. Understood. Iron Fist executes new coordinates. Movement begins at 0330. Confirmation 4. 792 Supply Depot. They accepted it. The German panzer commander just confirmed that he's redirecting his entire assault force to the false coordinates Walter provided. Walter releases the transmit button. His hands shake so violently he nearly drops the radio. He rips off the headphones and looks at Lieutenant Harrow. Neither of them speaks. There are no words. Sergeant Briggs lets out a breath that sounds like a sob. Did that just work? Tell me that just worked. It worked, Harrow says quietly. His voice is filled with something between awe and terror. Brenner just lied to the entire German panzer command structure, and they believed him. Danny Martinez grabs Walter's shoulder. Hermano, you crazy son of a bitch, you just saved us. But Walter isn't celebrating. He's putting the headphones back on, monitoring the German frequency, because this isn't over. The deception worked, but it can only hold for so long. He listens as German panzer commanders begin coordinating the new attack plan, tank movements, infantry support, artillery preparation, all of it redirecting toward grid reference 4792, away from the American defensive position, away from the sleeping soldiers. The German voices are efficient, professional, executing the new orders without question. In their world, Division Command has redirected them to a higher priority target. There's no reason to doubt. The transmission was perfect. The authentication was correct. The order came through proper channels. They have no idea they're following instructions from a 19-year-old American corporal who learned German from his grandmother in Milwaukee. 3:15 in the morning. Walter continues monitoring. He hears tank engines starting in the distance. The deep rumble of German armor preparing to move. But the movement is south toward the false coordinates, not east toward the American position. It's working. 3:30. German units report they're in motion. Panzer columns moving through the snow, infantry advancing in support. The assault has begun against a target that doesn't matter. A supply depot that was already evacuated, an objective with no strategic value. The men in Company C sleep in their foxholes unaware that the attack plan for dawn has been diverted 8 kilometers away. But then 3:45 in the morning, everything changes. Walter hears new voices on the German frequency, higher-ranking officers, more senior command. A German Colonel Oberst Friedrich Steiner, Tactical Operations Commander for the 5th Panzer Army. His voice is sharp with confusion and anger. Eisenfaust hier, Oberst Steiner. Erklären Sie die Zieländerung. Ich habe keinen Befehl für diese Operation erteilt. Iron Fist, this is Colonel Steiner. Explain the target change. I issued no order for this operation. Walter's blood runs cold. Division Command didn't issue that order. Walter did. And now the real Division Command is asking questions. The Panzer commander caught between conflicting directives responds with confusion. Oberst, wir haben Befehl von Divisionskommando 0247 erhalten. Priorität 1, neue Koordinaten, 4792. Colonel, we received orders from Division Command at 0247. Priority 1, new coordinates. 4792, Colonel Steiner's response is immediate and brutal. Ich bin Divisionskommando. Ich habe diesen Befehl nicht erteilt. Sie wurden getäuscht. I am Division Command. I did not issue that order. You have been deceived. The word getäuscht echoes through Walter's headphones. Deceived. They know, the Germans know the order was false. Walter rips off the headphones again. He looks at Lieutenant Harrow with panic in his eyes. Sir, they figured it out. Colonel Steiner just told the Panzer commander that the order was fraudulent. They know they've been deceived. How long ago did you transmit? 58 minutes, sir. How long until they can reverse course and resume the original attack? I don't know. They're 8 kilometers out of position. They'd need to coordinate the reversal, regroup, reposition. Maybe 90 minutes. Maybe less. Harrow doesn't hesitate. He grabs his radio and calls battalion headquarters. This is Harrow. The deception is compromised. Germans are aware of the false order. They're going to reverse course. We need defensive preparation immediately. He switches to company frequency. All units, this is Lieutenant Harrow. Stand to. German attack imminent. Man defensive positions. Prepare for panzer assault from the east. This is not a drill. Around the American defensive perimeter, soldiers wake instantly. Training takes over. They grab weapons. They move to fighting positions. Machine guns are manned. Bazookas are distributed. The few anti-tank weapons they have are positioned on likely approach roads. The critical difference is this: they're awake, they're aware, they're prepared. When the German panzers finally reverse course and resume their original attack plan, they won't be attacking sleeping soldiers. They'll be attacking a defensive position that's ready for them. 4:30 in the morning, on the German frequency, Walter listens to the chaos his transmission created. The Panzer Commander Hauptmann Klaus Reinhardt is being interrogated by Colonel Steiner. How did you accept an unverified order, Hauptmann? Oberst, the transmission was perfect. Perfect authentication. Perfect protocol. Native German. Military terminology flawless. I had no reason to suspect deception. You should have verified with higher command before executing such a significant operational change. Oberst, the order came with Priority 1 designation. It indicated immediate strategic necessity. Verification would have delayed execution. Your failure to verify has compromised this entire operation. The Americans now have nearly 2 hours of warning. The element of surprise is lost. There's a pause. Then Colonel Steiner's voice, cold and final. You will face immediate inquiry, Hauptmann. This conversation is concluded. Walter listens to this exchange with a growing sense of something he didn't expect. Guilt. Hauptmann Klaus Reinhardt accepted Walter's false order because it was perfect. Because Walter's German was so flawless, so authentic, that a professional German military officer had no reason to doubt it. And now Reinhardt is facing court-martial, facing professional destruction. His career ended, his reputation ruined. Because Walter spoke with his grandmother's voice. 5 o'clock in the morning. The sky begins to lighten in the east. Not sunrise yet, but the first hint of dawn. That gray pre-morning light that makes everything visible but colorless. Walter sits in his foxhole headphones on, listening as German units scramble to reverse course. Tank commanders reporting positions. Infantry coordinators trying to re-establish proper support formations. Artillery observers attempting to reacquire targets they had already calculated and then abandoned. It's chaos. Professional military chaos, disciplined and organized, but chaos nonetheless. The coordinated panzer assault that was supposed to annihilate the surrounded unit in their sleep has become a disorganized advance against a prepared defensive position. 5:45 in the morning. The attack finally comes. German panzers advance through the snow from the east as Walter's intercepted intelligence predicted. But they're 2 hours late, 2 hours disorganized, 2 hours behind their original timeline. And the Americans are ready. Bazooka teams fire from concealed positions. The first panzer takes a direct hit. The explosion lights up the dawn. Black smoke against gray snow. The tank stops track-blown crew bailing out. The second panzer continues advancing. American machine guns open fire on German infantry following behind the armor. Tracers cut through the morning darkness like red lines drawn across the landscape. More bazooka rounds. Another panzer hit. Not destroyed, but immobilized. Its gun still fires, but it can't maneuver. German infantry tries to flank the American positions. They run into interlocking fields of machine gun fire. Men fall. Others take cover. The advance stalls. Artillery, what little the Americans have, begins firing. Not much, a few mortars, but it's enough to disrupt German coordination. The battle lasts 23 minutes. Then the Germans withdraw. The attack has failed. Without surprise, without proper coordination against a prepared defensive position, the assault cannot succeed. The casualty exchange rate doesn't favor the attackers. The panzers pull back. The infantry retreats to their original positions. 6:30 in the morning. The sun rises over frozen Bastogne. The American defensive perimeter holds. Casualties 3 killed, 9 wounded. Without Walter's transmission, without those 90 minutes of warning, the casualties would have been catastrophic. The casualty projections were precise. Soldiers caught sleeping would have faced panzer assault with no preparation, no coordination, no chance. The mathematics of survival would have been brutal and unforgiving. Instead, Company C survived. Sergeant Tommy Briggs sits in his foxhole shaking. Not from cold, from the realization of how close he came to dying. How close his daughters came to receiving a telegram and a folded flag. He finds Walter an hour later. He doesn't say anything. He just hands him the photo of his 2 daughters and squeezes his shoulder. Danny Martinez survived with shrapnel in his left leg. Medics patch him up. The wound isn't serious. He'll recover. He finds Walter and grins through the pain. Hermano, I owe you my life. You know that, right? I owe you everything. Lieutenant Harrow survived. He'll be promoted to captain within a month. He finds Walter in the early afternoon after the battlefield has quieted. Brenner, what you did was illegal. It violated every protocol we have. If this becomes public, you'll face court-martial. I know, sir. It was also the bravest thing I've ever seen, and it saved lives. I just gave them a chance, sir. That's all. Sometimes a chance is everything. Harrow pauses. Battalion command is already implementing the classification protocols. This never happened. Officially, the German attack was redirected due to their own communications confusion. Your name won't appear in any report. No medal, no recognition, just silence. I understand, sir. Do you saved men, and history will never know your name. Walter thinks about Tommy Briggs' daughters, about Danny Martinez joking about being forgotten, about the families who won't receive telegrams. I don't need history to know, sir. I just need them to go home. 6 kilometers away at German 5th Panzer Army headquarters, Hauptmann Klaus Reinhardt stands before a military tribunal. The charges are formal and devastating. Criminal negligence in command, failure to verify orders, compromising operational security, allowing enemy deception to succeed. His defense is simple. The transmission was perfect, native German, perfect protocol. I had no tactical reason to suspect American involvement. The tribunal is unmoved. You accepted orders without proper verification. Your failure resulted in operational compromise. This court finds you guilty of negligence. You are demoted to lieutenant. You are reassigned to punishment duties on the Eastern Front. Reinhardt's career ends in a frozen Belgian morning because a 19-year-old American corporal spoke German with his grandmother's accent. The German military paranoid, now about further deceptions, implements new authentication protocols. All radio orders must be verified through multiple channels. No single transmission is trusted. No commander can redirect forces based solely on radio communication. Walter Brenner's single transmission created systemic distrust in the German command structure. They second-guess everything now. They verify and re-verify. They waste precious time confirming what should be obvious. One voice, one transmission, one moment of perfect deception, and the consequences ripple through the entire German military hierarchy. But Walter doesn't know about Hauptmann Reinhardt's court-martial. He doesn't know about the new protocols. He doesn't know that his grandmother's voice changed how an entire army communicates. He only knows that the men in Company C survived December 18th, 1944. And that's enough, December 21st, 1944. 3 days after Walter Brenner saved lives by breaking every rule, and 3 days before the United States Army decides whether to execute him for it. Walter stands outside battalion headquarters waiting. Around him, the war continues. Artillery rumbles in the distance. Supply trucks churn through mud. Soldiers prepare for battles he may never fight, because in 10 minutes he'll learn his fate: court-martial in execution, or silence in survival. The door opens. A sergeant gestures him inside. Major Kenneth Warren sits behind a field desk. Lieutenant Harrow stands to one side. Captain Theodore Armstrong, the battalion legal officer, stands to the other. Their faces are grim. Warren speaks first. Corporal Brenner, what you did on December 18th saved approximately 300 American lives. The intelligence you intercepted was accurate. The action you took was effective. The outcome was successful. Walter waits. There's a but coming. He can hear it in Warren's tone. However, your action was also illegal. You violated radio silence protocols. You engaged in unauthorized psychological warfare. You impersonated an enemy military officer. You took command authority you did not possess. By the letter of military law, you committed multiple court-martial offenses. Captain Armstrong opens a folder. Article 81, conspiracy. Article 92, failure to obey order or regulation. Article 134, conduct, prejudicial to good order and discipline. Each of these carries potential penalties, including imprisonment or execution. The word execution hangs in the air like smoke. Warren continues, we have a problem, Corporal. Word is spreading. Soldiers talk. The story of the radio man who fooled the Germans is becoming legend in this battalion. Men are asking questions. They want to know who did it. They want to celebrate the person who saved their lives. He pauses, choosing his words carefully. We cannot allow that to happen. If this story becomes public, if it reaches military courts, you will face prosecution. And more than that, it will set a dangerous precedent. It will suggest that soldiers can ignore orders, can take unauthorized action, can make command decisions on their own authority whenever they believe it's justified. Armstrong adds, the Army cannot function if every private and corporal decides which orders to follow based on personal judgment. Military discipline requires obedience to chain of command. Your action, however successful, undermines that fundamental principle. Walter understands. They're going to prosecute him. Men alive, and they're going to execute him for saving them. But Warren surprises him. Therefore, we are classifying this entire incident. Effective immediately. Top secret designation, all records Untold. All personnel involved sworn to secrecy. He slides documents across the desk. Official papers with classification stamps and signature lines. You will sign a non-disclosure agreement. You are forbidden from discussing this transmission for the duration of your military service and for 25 years thereafter. You will not speak of it to fellow soldiers. You will not speak of it to family. You will not speak of it to anyone. Warren's voice softens slightly. Your service record will be amended. The details of December 18th will be removed. The official report will state that German forces experienced communications difficulties which resulted in failed coordination. No mention of American involvement. No mention of deception. No mention of your name. In exchange, you will not face court-martial. You will not be prosecuted. You will be protected from legal consequences. He pauses. But you will also never receive recognition. No medal, no commendation, no public acknowledgement. Men will go home because of you, and no one will ever know your name. Warren looks at him directly. Corporal Brenner, are you willing to accept these terms? Walter thinks about Sergeant Briggs showing him photos of his daughters, about Danny Martinez joking in the foxhole, about the soldiers who woke up alive on December 18th because he spoke German into a radio. Yes, sir, I accept. Sign here. Walter signs the non-disclosure agreement. His signature looks small on the official document. The act of signing feels like erasing himself from history. Warren countersigns. You're being transferred effective immediately. Communications Unit, Rear Echelon, France. Safe assignment. Far from combat. We're removing you from this battalion, from these men, from anyone who knows what you did. When do I leave, sir? Tomorrow morning. Pack your gear. Say your goodbyes. But remember, you cannot tell anyone why you're being transferred. As far as they know, it's routine reassignment. The meeting ends. Walter salutes and leaves. Outside, the winter sun is bright on snow. The war continues around him, indifferent to one soldier's sacrifice. January 5th, 1945. Walter's last morning with Company C. His gear is packed. His orders are ready. A supply truck will take him to the rear area, away from the front lines, away from the men he saved. Sergeant Tommy Briggs finds him first. They stand together in silence for a moment. Then Briggs speaks. They're transferring you. Nobody will say why, but I know it's connected to what happened, to why we're all still alive. Walter says nothing. The non-disclosure agreement forbids him from confirming or denying. Briggs continues. I don't know exactly what you did that night, Brenner, but I know my girls are going to see me again because of it. I know I'm going home to Nebraska because of you. He pulls out the photograph he's shown Walter so many times. Two little girls smiling, but this time instead of showing it, he hands it to Walter. Keep this. Remember them. Remember why it mattered. Walter takes the photo. His throat is tight. Sarge, I can't take your picture of your daughters. You can, you will, because 20 years from now, when you're wondering if any of this meant anything, I want you to look at that photo and remember. Sarah and Emily Briggs got to grow up with a father because of you. That matters. That will always matter. They shake hands. Briggs walks away. He doesn't look back. Danny Martinez appears next, limping slightly from the shrapnel wound in his leg. Hermano. He grips Walter's shoulder. They're splitting us up, sending you somewhere safe, I hope. I hope so too. Listen, man, I don't know what you did. Nobody's saying, but I know you saved us. I know whatever crazy thing you pulled off, it worked. And I want you to know something. Danny's voice becomes serious. I'm gonna get married someday. Gonna have kids. Gonna live a whole life. And every single bit of that life exists because you had the guts to do something when it mattered. I won't forget that. Ever. They embrace. Brothers forged in frozen foxholes. Lieutenant Harrow is last. He finds Walter by the supply truck waiting to leave. Corporal Brenner. His tone is formal, but his eyes are warm. Your transfer orders are in order. You'll report to the 45th Signal Battalion in Lyon. Communications work. Safe duty. Thank you, sir. Harrow lowers his voice. What you did was illegal, Brenner. It violated every regulation we have. If you'd failed, I would have testified against you at your court-martial, as I promised. I know, sir. But what you did was also right. And those two things can both be true at the same time. Don't ever forget that. Sometimes the law is wrong. Sometimes following orders means complicity in something terrible. And sometimes breaking the rules is the only moral choice. He extends his hand. I'm recommending you for promotion to sergeant. It won't mention December 18th. It'll cite general excellence in communications duty, but you and I will know what it really means. They shake hands, officer and enlisted man, both carrying the weight of what they did. Good luck, Brenner. Stay alive. Go home when this war ends. Live a life. That's an order. Walter climbs into the supply truck. As it pulls away, he watches Company C disappear behind him. Men who will go home, families who won't receive telegrams, lives saved by a grandmother's voice. But none of them will ever know his name. June 1945. The war in Europe ends. Germany surrenders. The killing stops. Walter Brenner returns to the United States, to Milwaukee, to the small house where his grandmother raised him. Margaret Brenner is 69 years old now, frailer than when he left. Her hands shake with age. Her hearing is fading, but her mind remains sharp. She opens the door and sees her grandson in uniform. Her face transforms. Joy and relief and love all mixing together. Walter, mein Junge, du bist am Leben. You're alive. They embrace. She's so small now, so fragile. He towers over her. But in this moment, he's 5 years old again, sitting on her lap, learning to speak German. They sit in her kitchen, the same kitchen where she taught him to make words sound like music, the same table where she corrected his pronunciation, the same windows looking out on the same Milwaukee street. She makes him tea. Her hands shake as she pours. They sit together in silence for a long moment. Then she speaks. Du bist anders. Etwas ist geschehen. You're different. Something happened. Walter wants to tell her everything. He wants to tell her that her language, her voice, her teaching saved American lives. That the hours she spent teaching him German in this kitchen meant the difference between life and death for families. But he can't. The non-disclosure agreement forbids it. Ich kann nicht darüber sprechen, Oma. I can't talk about it, grandmother. She studies his face with eyes that have seen more than 70 years of life. Der Krieg, the war, ja. Hast du verwendet, was ich dir beigebracht habe, die Sprache? Did you use what I taught you, the language? Walter hesitates. The agreement forbids specifics. But this is his grandmother, the woman who gave him this gift. Ah, ich habe es verwendet. Yes, I used it. Zum Guten oder zum Bösen, for good or for evil. Zum Guten, for good. Margaret nods slowly, satisfied. Dan bin ich stolz. Then I am proud. She doesn't ask for details. She doesn't press. She simply accepts that her grandson used the gift she gave him and that he used it for good. That's enough for her. They sit together in the kitchen, speaking German, and for a few hours, Walter feels at peace. But the peace doesn't last. In the months that follow, Walter struggles. He attends the University of Wisconsin on the GI Bill. He studies electrical engineering. He tries to build a normal life, but he carries weight that he cannot share. He saved lives, but he's forbidden from telling anyone. He violated military law, but he was protected from prosecution. He did something extraordinary, but history will never record his name. The contradiction gnaws at him. He avoids veteran organizations. He doesn't attend military reunions. When people ask about his war service, he says he was a radio operator and changes the subject. He dates a woman named Helen, a teacher. They marry in 1947. She asks about the war once. He tells her he'd rather not discuss it. She never asks again. They build a life together. Walter gets a job at an electrical engineering firm. They buy a small house. They have 2 children. On the surface, everything is normal. But every December 18th, Walter remembers. He sits alone and thinks about a frozen foxhole in Belgium, about German voices on a radio, about soldiers sleeping unaware they were supposed to die. He wonders if they remember. He wonders if they know. He wonders if it mattered. December 1947, 2 years after the war ended, Walter receives a letter. No return address, postmarked from Nebraska. His hands shake as he opens it. Inside a photograph. Two young girls, older now, ages 6 and 8, standing in front of a Christmas tree, smiling. Happy, live. On the back of the photo handwriting he recognizes from a frozen foxhole in Belgium. They ask about you every Christmas. They don't know your name, but they know someone saved their daddy. Thank you, Brenner. Thank you for giving me the chance to watch them grow up. TB. Tommy Briggs. Alive. Home. Raising his daughters. Walter sits at his kitchen table and cries. It's the first time he's cried since the war. Helen finds him there, tears streaming down his face, clutching a photo of two little girls he's never met. Walter, what's wrong? He can't tell, the non-disclosure agreement. 25 years of silence required by law. Nothing, just memories. She holds him. She doesn't understand. She can't understand. But she holds him anyway. Over the next few years, more letters arrive. Always without return addresses. Always careful not to mention specifics. Danny Martinez, 1948. Got married, hermano. Her name is Rosa. Wish you could be here. You saved my life so I could have this one. Never forget that. Lieutenant Harrow, 1950. Made major. Sometimes I think about that night, about the choice we made. Still don't know if it was right by the book, but I know it was right. Stay well, Brenner. The letters are vague enough to pass any censorship, but Walter understands. The men he saved didn't forget. They remember. They're living lives that wouldn't exist without him. And slowly over years, the weight becomes bearable. He didn't do it for recognition. He did it because men were going to die, and he could do something about it. The fact that they're alive, that they're living, that they're building families and futures, that's enough. It has to be enough. The years pass, Walter's children grow up. He becomes a grandfather. His engineering career flourishes. He lives a quiet, normal life in Milwaukee. Margaret dies in 1969 at age 93. Walter speaks the eulogy in German, honoring the woman who gave him language, and unknowingly the ability to save lives. At her funeral, he thinks about telling the mourners what her teaching meant, how her voice channeled through him stopped a Panzer assault, how men came home because she taught a boy to speak German in her kitchen. But he can't. The non-disclosure agreement is still in force. Until 1970, he must remain silent. 1975. 30 years after the war, the United States military begins routine declassification of World War II records. Thousands of documents are released to the National Archives. Historians gain access to materials that have been sealed for 3 decades. Dr. Robert Chen, a military historian at Georgetown University, is researching the Battle of the Bulge. He's examining tactical decisions, unit movements, casualty patterns. He finds a notation in a battalion operations report from December 1944, a single line that makes him pause. December 18, 1944. Enemy communications disruption resulted in failed assault on defensive positions near Bastogne. Estimated casualties prevented 300 plus. Method classified. The word classified catches his attention. Most operational details from 1944 have been declassified by now. What method would still be restricted 30 years later? He requests the classified files. It takes 6 months of bureaucratic navigation, security clearances, Freedom of Information Act requests, appeals. Finally, in November 1975, the files are released. Dr. Chen reads them in an archive reading room in Washington, D.C. As he turns the pages, his eyes widen. The unauthorized radio transmission, the impersonation of a German officer, the false orders, the redirection of panzer forces, the debate about court-martial, the decision to classify rather than prosecute, and the name, Corporal Walter Brenner. Chen spends the next 2 years researching. He finds Walter's service record, now partially unsealed. He finds the amended notation from 1944. Corporal Brenner's unauthorized action, while technically illegal, demonstrated exceptional moral courage and resulted in preservation of approximately 300 American lives. No disciplinary action warranted due to operational success and classification of incident. He writes an article, The Battle of the Bulges, Unknown Hero, How One Soldier's Illegal Act Saved 300 Lives. It's published in the Journal of Military History in May 1978, an academic journal with limited circulation. The article is thorough, well-researched, and read by approximately 800 historians and military scholars. One of those readers is a retired farmer in Nebraska named Tommy Briggs. He's 64 years old now. His daughters are grown, married, have children of their own. He's lived the life that Walter Brenner gave him. And now, for the first time, he knows the full story. He knows exactly what happened that frozen night in December 1944. He contacts Dr. Chen. "I was there. I'm one of the men Corporal Brenner saved. I need to find him. I need to thank him." Chen helps him locate Walter. It's not difficult. Walter Brenner still lives in Milwaukee at the same address where his grandmother raised him. September 1976, Tommy Briggs drives from Nebraska to Milwaukee. It takes him 2 days. He's not sure what he'll say. He's rehearsed a dozen different speeches. All of them feel inadequate. How do you thank someone for giving you 32 extra years of life? He knocks on the door of a modest house in a German-American neighborhood. A man opens the door. 51 years old, graying hair, engineer's hands, eyes that carry old weight. "Can I help you, Walter Brenner?" "Yes. My name is Tommy Briggs, Sergeant 394th Infantry Regiment. December 1944, Bastonia." Walter's face changes. Recognition, memory, emotion flooding through decades of silence. "Briggs, Sarge, you son of a bitch, you really did it." They stare at each other. 32 years since a frozen foxhole. 32 years since Walter pressed a transmit button and spoke with his grandmother's voice. Then they embrace. Two old soldiers who survived. Briggs is crying, Walter is crying, both of them holding on to each other like lifelines. They sit in Walter's living room. Helen brings coffee, sensing this is important, not asking questions. Briggs pulls out a folder. Photos. His daughters, now grown women. His grandchildren, 5 grandkids ages 2 to 8. "This is Sarah. She's a nurse, married 2 kids. This is Emily. She's a teacher, married 3 kids." He lays the photos on the coffee table. A family tree that exists because Walter Brenner spoke German into a radio 32 years ago. "Brenda, you gave me my life. You gave my daughters their father. You gave my grandchildren their grandfather. Do you understand what that means?" Walter looks at the photos, at the faces of people he's never met. People who wouldn't exist if he'd followed orders on December 18th, 1944. "I just gave you a chance, Sarge. That's all." "A chance is everything." Briggs' voice is fierce. "I got to watch Sarah learn to read. I walked her down the aisle at her wedding. I held her babies when they were born. Emily learned to ride a bike with me, running behind her. I taught her to drive. I danced at her wedding." His voice breaks. 32 years, Brenner. 32 years of life, of love, of family. Because you had the guts to break the rules when it mattered. They talk for hours about the war, about what happened after, about the weight Walter carried alone for 3 decades. Briggs tells him something Walter never knew. "After the war, I testified to a military review board. They were evaluating your case, deciding whether the classification was permanent or if they should prosecute you retroactively. I told them you saved lives. I advocated for you to receive the Medal of Honor." Walter stares at him. "What happened?" "They denied it, said they couldn't decorate illegal conduct even if the outcome was positive. But they did something else. They amended your service record, added a classified commendation. It said your action demonstrated exceptional moral courage and preservation of American lives." "I never knew that." "They didn't tell you. It was buried in classified files, but it was there. The Army knew what you did mattered. They just couldn't say it out loud." Briggs leaves the next morning. Before he goes, he gives Walter something, a list, handwritten, 300 names. "I spent 2 years tracking them down. The men who were in that defensive perimeter on December 18th, 1944. This is who you saved." Walter looks at the list, name after name. Each one a life. Each one a future. "Most of them don't know your name," Briggs continues. "The classification held. But they know someone did something. They know they're alive because of a miracle they don't understand. I thought you should know who they are. What became of them?" He's added notes beside many names. "Married 3 children. Dr. Chicago, teacher retired. Died 1963 cancer but got 18 more years. 5 grandchildren. Lives, thousands of descendants. An entire population that exists because a 19-year-old corporal spoke his grandmother's language into a radio. 1978. Dr. Robert Chen continues his research. He's expanding his article into a book about unknown heroes of World War II. He obtains German military records through archival exchanges with West Germany. He's looking for the German perspective on the December 18th deception. He finds documentation of a court-martial. Hauptmann Klaus Reinhardt, Panzer commander, accused of accepting fraudulent orders. The German records include testimony. Reinhardt's defense. The transmission was perfect. Native German, flawless accent, proper military protocol. I had no tactical reason to suspect American deception. The authentication was correct. The order came through proper channels. I executed what I believed to be a legitimate command from Division Command. The verdict? Guilty of criminal negligence. Demotion to lieutenant. Reassignment to punishment battalion on the Eastern Front. Chen manages to locate Reinhardt. He's 76 years old, living in a small village in Bavaria. Retired. Quiet life. Chen interviews him about the incident. Reinhardt speaks slowly, choosing his words carefully. His English is good learned during post-war reconstruction work. I have thought about that transmission for 34 years. Every detail, every word. The voice was absolutely perfect. Perfect Hochdeutsch. Perfect Prussian inflection. Perfect military bearing. I would have sworn it was a German division command staff officer. He pauses. When I learned it was American deception, when I faced court-martial, I was angry. Humiliated. My career destroyed by a single radio transmission. But over the years, I came to understand something. That American soldier, whoever he was protecting his men. He used intelligence, not violence. He used language, not weapons. He defeated us without firing a shot. Reinhardt looks directly at Chen. In war, we are taught to kill the enemy, but he outmaneuvered us through pure intellect and linguistic skill. That takes a different kind of courage. I don't forgive what happened to my career, but I respect why he did it. He was a soldier protecting his men. I was a soldier following orders. We were both doing our duty as we understood it. Chen includes this in his book published in 1980. Voices of War, The Untold Stories of World War II. The book sells modestly, perhaps 5,000 copies. It's read mostly by military history enthusiasts and veterans, but it reaches the people who matter. Letters begin arriving at Walter's house, dozens of them, from across America. My father was at Bastogne. He never talked about the war, but before he died in 1975, he told me about the morning he should have died but didn't. He said a miracle happened. Now I know it was you. Thank you for giving me my father. My grandfather was in the 394th Infantry. He lived to walk my mother down the aisle at her wedding because of you. Our entire family exists because you spoke German into a radio. My uncle survived December 18th, 1944. He had 5 children, 12 grandchildren, 23 great-grandchildren. All of us alive because of your courage. The letters keep coming. Children and grandchildren of the men Walter saved. Most of them never knew the details, but now they know. Now they understand. Walter keeps every letter. He stores them in a box in his closet. Sometimes late at night when the weight becomes heavy, he reads them. Reminders that it mattered, that lives became thousands of lives, that his grandmother's voice echoed through generations. For 35 years, Walter carried the burden alone. The classification, the silence, the weight of having saved lives that no one acknowledged. But now finally he can share it. The classification has expired. The story is public. The men he saved know his name, and the weight finally begins to lift. December 1994, 50 years after the transmission, the town of Bastogne, Belgium holds a memorial ceremony for the 50th anniversary of the Battle of the Bulge. Veterans from around the world attend. American, British, German, old men returning to the place where they were young and fighting. Walter Brennan is invited as a guest of honor. He's 69 years old now, the same age his grandmother was when he returned from the war. Helen accompanies him. Their children and grandchildren come too. They stand at a memorial monument, a stone wall with names engraved. Americans who died in the Battle of the Bulge. Thousands of names, young men who never came home. Walter looks at the monument and thinks about the names that aren't there. Names that should be on this wall but aren't. Men who came home, who lived, who had families, because of him. The ceremony includes speeches. Generals and politicians talking about sacrifice and heroism and the price of freedom. Then someone asks Walter to speak. He's uncomfortable with public attention. He's spent 50 years in silence, but he agrees. He stands at the podium, looking out at hundreds of faces, veterans, family members, historians, media. He speaks simply, no grand rhetoric, just truth. I'm not a hero. I was a scared 19-year-old kid with a radio and a grandmother who taught me to speak German. What I did was illegal. I violated military law. I impersonated an enemy officer. By every regulation, I should have faced court-martial. But I also knew that men were going to die at dawn if I didn't act. So I made a choice. I chose to break the law. He pauses, looking at the memorial wall, at the thousands of names, at the spaces where more names could have been. I don't regret that choice. I regret that I had to make it. I regret that the system couldn't save those men within legal bounds. But I don't regret speaking German into that radio. My grandmother used to tell me, language is a weapon. Use it wisely. I used it, and men went home to their families. His voice breaks slightly. Some of them are here today. Most aren't. Some died later in other battles or from old age. But they got more time. They got to live. And that matters. That will always matter. The audience is silent. Then someone starts clapping. One person, then another, then hundreds. The applause continues for 2 full minutes. After the ceremony, the Belgian government unveils a small plaque near the main monument. Walter didn't know about this. It's a surprise. The plaque reads, "In memory of Corporal Walter Brenner, United States Army Signal Corps, who on December 18, 1944, used courage, linguistic skill, and moral conviction to save approximately 300 American lives. His action was unauthorized. His action was necessary." His courage reminds us that sometimes the greatest heroism lies in the willingness to break unjust rules to protect the innocent. Walter stands before the plaque with tears streaming down his face. Around him, children and grandchildren of the men he saved. 3 generations. Hundreds of people who exist because he pressed a transmit button 50 years ago. They thank him. They embrace him. They exist because of him. Tommy Briggs is there now, 80 years old. His daughters Sarah and Emily. Their children, their children's children. Sarah approaches Walter. She's 46 years old. A nurse, a mother, a grandmother herself now. "Mr. Brenner, I never got to thank you. I was 4 years old when you saved my father. I don't remember the telegram that never came, but I remember my childhood. I remember my dad teaching me to ride a bike. I remember him walking me down the aisle at my wedding. I remember him holding my babies." She's crying now. "I got to have my father because of you. My children got to have their grandfather. Thank you doesn't begin to cover it, but thank you." Walter holds her hands. This woman who was 4 years old in 1944, who grew up with a father because he spoke German in a frozen foxhole. "Your father showed me your photo, you and your sister. That photo is why I did it, knowing that you existed, that you needed him. We did need him, and we got him, because of you." The ceremony ends, but Walter stays at the monument for a long time, looking at the names, thinking about the names that aren't there, thinking about his grandmother, about her voice in the Milwaukee kitchen, about the way she taught him that words could be weapons. She died 25 years ago. She never knew what her teaching accomplished. She died before the classification was lifted, before the story became public. But Walter knows, and that's enough. He whispers to her in German. Soft words that only he can hear. "Du hattest recht, Oma. Die Worte müssen wie Musik klingen. Und sie haben Leben gerettet." You were right, grandmother. The words must sound like music, and they saved lives. The sun sets over Bastogne. Walter stands with his family, with the families of the men he saved. With the weight finally lifted, for 50 years he carried the burden of silence. But now finally the story is told. The soldiers survived December 18, 1944. Those soldiers had children, approximately 1,500 children. Those children had children, approximately 4,000 grandchildren. Those grandchildren are having children now. The count grows with each generation. Conservative estimate. More than 5,000 people alive today because a 19-year-old corporal spoke his grandmother's language into a German radio. 5,000 futures, 5,000 lives, 5,000 stories, all because of language, all because of music, all because an old woman in Milwaukee taught a boy to speak German with perfect authenticity. Walter Brenner dies in 1998 at age 73. Heart attack, quick and painless. His obituary in the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel is brief. Walter Brenner, electrical engineer, World War II veteran, survived by wife Helen, 2 children, 5 grandchildren. Services Saturday. No mention of December 18, 1944. No mention of lives saved. Just another veteran passing quietly into history. But at his funeral, something extraordinary happens. People come from across the country, hundreds of them. They fill the church. They overflow into the street outside. Children and grandchildren of the men Walter saved, carrying photos, carrying stories, carrying the weight of gratitude that spans 3 generations. They speak, one after another, telling what Walter's action meant. My grandfather came home because of Walter Brenner. He had 4 children, 10 grandchildren. I'm one of them. I exist because Walter had courage. My father never talked about the war, but one night late after too much whiskey, he told me about the morning he should have died. He said an angel spoke German and saved his life. Now I know that angel's name. My uncle survived Bastogne. He became a teacher, taught for 35 years, influenced thousands of students, all because Walter gave him a chance. The stories continue for hours. A litany of lives, of futures, of possibilities that existed because one man chose conscience over law. Helen sits in the front pew crying, finally understanding the weight her husband carried for so many years. Their children finally understand why their father was distant every December 18th, why he kept a box of letters in his closet, why he sometimes spoke German late at night when he thought no one could hear. The funeral ends, but the legacy continues. In 2004, Dr. Robert Chen publishes a revised edition of his book. The chapter on Walter Brenner is expanded. New interviews, new documentation, more detail about the transmission and its consequences. The book includes the final count. Based on census data and genealogical research, Chen estimates that Walter Brenner's action on December 18, 1944, resulted in approximately 5,800 people being alive in 2004 who would not otherwise exist. 5,800 lives, from one transmission, from one grandmother's voice. The lesson is this: Walter Brenner was not a hero because he was brave. Many soldiers are brave. He was not a hero because he was skilled. Many soldiers are skilled. He was a hero because he understood that sometimes following orders means complicity in preventable tragedy, and sometimes breaking the rules is the only moral choice. The United States Army classified his story for 30 years because it was dangerous. Not dangerous to national security, dangerous to the myth that obedience is always virtue. But Walter knew better. He knew that rules exist to serve people, not the other way around. He knew that lives mattered more than military regulations. He pressed the transmit button. He spoke with his grandmother's voice. He violated every rule. He risked execution, and men came home. That's the story. That's the truth. That's the legacy. Sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't made of steel. Sometimes it's a voice, a language, a grandmother's teaching in a kitchen in Milwaukee. Sometimes the words must sound like music, and sometimes that music saves lives. Walter Brenner's story was buried for 50 years, but the truth survived, the men survived, the families survived, and the lesson survives. Sometimes the bravest act is the willingness to stand alone, to break the rules, to face consequences, to do what's right even when the law says it's wrong. Soldiers lived because one man understood that. 5,800 people exist today because he had the courage to act. The words sounded like music, and the music echoed through generations. That's the legacy of Walter Brenner. That's the power of a grandmother's voice. That's the truth that history tried to bury. Remember his name. Remember what he did. Remember that sometimes one person, one choice, one moment of moral courage can change everything. Lives saved. 5,800 descendants, All because a boy learned to speak German in his grandmother's kitchen. The words must sound like music. They did. And they saved the world for families who never knew his name. That's enough. That will always be enough.